So we're here to talk through this loop variation by Carl Wirth. A lot of the challenge comes from identifying which rows are which. Really, we don't know any of the circles to start except that this white circle in this corner can't be a Masyu clue, so I'm going to mark on this right column B for balance loop or M for Masyu just to keep my own notation clear. We saw earlier in the week and even in other balance loops before that a corner white is a common break-in point for that style. A reason is that it's going to be extending an equal number of cells in this direction, but if it extends only a few cells, say it turned after 1, it's going to shut itself off too soon. Even if it extends out 2 in this particular corner and turned into these cells, since it has to visit this black circle, you'd form this kind of shape, and you'll see that that's no good. So it has to extend at least 3 cells in this corner. And once this intersects with this white circle, we get to almost a branch point, but you can ask yourself, is this a Masyu or balance loop? If it's a Masyu, it has to come down one more. It would immediately turn. That would force us to be a balance loop, and it would be a 4-long clue to this point. This circle can't come up. That would close off a square and not complete a loop. If it came down, it would end up here, and it's going to pass this black circle, going exactly 2 on each side of it, so it can't be a Masyu clue. Masyu would have turned, and it can't be a balance loop clue because a black can't be equally split. And so while it's a little bit of indirection, the fact that this can't be a Masyu row is a critical thing to determine. Now we need to understand, does this go straight or turn? And it's sort of easy to see. You could actually have caught this contradiction other ways sooner, that once you have a set of balance loop circles in a particular row or column, you really can have an infinite number of them, and this would now add a third balance loop circle to the space which need to go out. So this would want to end at row 7. This would want to end at row 9. This is a really problematic circle next to this circle when this is also a balance loop clue. So going down is not possible. This has to come to the right. And so we'll mark this, and we'll mark this turn. This really doesn't want to come up, close off a square, just as we would have seen with the 4x4. This will be a 3x3 square, so this comes down. It can't go any further, so that very quickly identifies this as a Masyu row. This being a corner white identifies another balance loop row. This being a black without 2 cells to go in this direction identifies a balance loop row. Because it has to be unequal in one direction or the other, once we go just 1 in this, it has to go at least 2, so you'll see how I've drawn it as helpful. That gets us here, and this end has to go another one, so this now cleanly looks like a Masyu row. So we can actually fill out the white circles like this, and I guess I'll mark this end as unusable. Coming back to the top, this black has to go out at least 2 cells. This end like this. This white will turn. This is a balance loop row, so this is going to go 1 more in some direction. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Let's start in this corner. And as we did at the very start of the puzzle, coming out just 1 cell and turning immediately is always an issue in a balance loop, so this has to go out at least 2. You can say, well, when we started the puzzle, going out 2 is a problem. That's because you had to visit the cell in between. That's an issue. Here there's no circle there, so we don't have to visit that cell. And so the shape that lets us escape a bad 2x2 square is going this way. We see that this white circle has to turn down if it continues to close itself off, so we get a balance loop row there. This black is too close to an edge to go more than 1 in that direction, so we get a balance loop there. We don't know what these rows are, but we have this shape of the grid starting to form. This is now a great time to come back to the Masyu row that we have identified and say that we're going to have these blacks come across. They'll touch like this. This black coming up would cause an issue with the white circle it intersects with, so it's going to come down. We now have to think about this circle, and a trick that I got that really helped me in this puzzle was to recognize that I could mark some edges with the maximum size, or I guess minimum size, the range of sizes that things can take. This white circle has 3 paths out from it. This can be anything from 1+, the top has to be exactly 1, and the bottom has to be 2 plus. And so what you can see is that you can't use both the top and the bottom. So whether you go up or you go down, at the very least you have to go right, and that's because the ranges don't overlap. When the ranges do overlap, you can have an equal distribution as required for this kind of clue. When they don't overlap, you can't. So coming to the right is critical. Now the sneaky connection is to just look at this edge, and if you actually connect across this edge, while it's good for this circle, what it causes is isolation of that cell. So we would form one coming to the right, we'd be forced to go down and go too long. That's not going to work, and so with this edge being uncrossable, this comes over 2, that invalidates this direction. This comes down at least 2. We get to here, we can move that edge over. This being a balanced loop, we can move this edge over. The last thing that I found helpful to do, it's really end counting. This comes up a lot of time in loop puzzles, but here I'll showcase it this way. Whenever you have a border that is being crossed by pieces of a loop, you have to cross that border an even number of times. Let's think about why if you cross, let's say I'm a loop and I have my 2 ends. If I cross this border once, my ends are on different sides of the grid. If I cross it twice, my ends can be on the same side again. If I cross it 3 times, I'm on opposite sides. This kind of parity is critical here. There's only one more border I can potentially cross along this boundary, but I already have 1, 2, 3, 4 crossing here. So this clue here, this Masyu black circle, cannot go up. It has to come down. Once it's come down 2 cells, this being a balanced loop clue says it comes down at least 1 more. This corner has to come like this regardless of what type of row this is, so we can draw this whole shape in. Now we can mark, just based on the fact that that black is in a corner of these cells. And what I do at this point is, in balanced loop, something like I was doing up above, is kind of mark the ranges of potential lengths on these things. And this black circle has 3 very short sides left to it, so it has to use the 4th to go out 2. This now has just one option for the white circle to get passed through, which is like this. We really can't say anything if it's Masyu or balanced loop yet, but we do know now that the bottom row is a balanced loop row. If this black circle comes to the right, it's going to isolate this end. If it comes up, it's going to isolate this end. By loop end parity, it has to come to the left, and these 2 ends have to connect. Get this connection to happen. The next thing, let's see what's helpful. Okay, now that this white circle has come up, we finally can isolate that that is a Masyu row. That now tells us the black circle has an end coming up, and it can't come to the right because it needs to go at least 2 cells. So it goes to the left. This end has to follow. Note that these ends right now are part of the same loop segment, so if they connected, that would cause a real problem. So this has to come 1 more cell. This white can't extend further this direction because it's a balanced loop white circle, so it has to come out and over. This end has to connect to it. These 2 ends still can't come together, so they're going to continue to dodge. That's okay if these circles are still Masyu and balanced loop as they should be. Coming up to the top, right now we actually have these 2 ends are the ones that can't come together, so this comes over, this comes up. We have to finish off the last few parts of this grid, and here's another situation where I have a black circle in a balanced loop row that has 3 ends that can only be the shortest possible, so it has to use the last potential direction and come up. This white circle came down 3, so it only can go across 3. Let's get something like this. If this black came left, it would strand this end, so this is not an option, so this has to come up here. Now we actually see these 2 ends. Once again, we've been chasing them throughout the grid. They can't come together, so it has to look like so. This comes to the right, this comes down. This is a Masyu white circle, so it immediately turns, and with that as the final deduction, we complete the whole puzzle. It's not necessarily so hard once you get your head around I think finding what are the balanced loop rows, and it really is a balanced loop focused puzzle in terms of most of its logic. The hardest steps such as this have to do with how these 2 balanced loop white circles can interact or can't interact. and marking this edge based on the fact that the ranges wouldn't allow the top and bottom to be used here, I think was the most insightful but important deduction in the middle. And then we saw some loop counting rules, particularly the one that kept us coming down here. And so the loop counting rules will be helpful in all loop puzzle styles. And so, there's a kind of tour de force of loop puzzles in merging Masyu and balanced loop. I think Carl's given us a good puzzle this week. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll see you again soon.